I had to do this in a Walmart parking lot because I wanted to get into the spirit of the United States, America. And what better place than a Walmart parking lot to remember you are an American? And this is not a sponsor. I just, I like to get very passionate about these videos. Again, not a sponsor in the Walmart parking lot. Let's talk about the U.S. military in the Middle East. Things are actually turning in favor of the U.S. military because I'm going to be honest with you. I was a little worried that the U.S. military was just going to keep getting sucker punched after sucker punch, attack after attack between Iraq and Syria. Now, if you're watching this video and you have zero idea what I'm talking about, since the beginning of the conflict in Israel, the United States military has received about 80 plus attacks between bases scattered in Iraq and Syria. And Joe Biden made the order to prepare for a worst-case scenario in the Middle East. And as the Department of Defense did this, they deployed more troops, more assets, more aircraft into the Middle East. More and more attacks started to happen on U.S. military members with no response. But recently, at the time of making this video, we're seeing responses from an AC-130J, which is a very elite aircraft, normally only operated from special operations or utilized by special forces. And all of a sudden, we're seeing an AC-130J, also known as a Ghost Rider, go after militants who attack U.S. military members. And today, at the time of making this video, we have more confirmation of more aircraft going after the Islamic resistance in Iraq. These are the perpetrators. This is who's going after the U.S. military. Now, here's what I pray for. I pray if the U.S. military and the leaders of the U.S. military decide to start going after these organizations, it doesn't escalate to a regional conflict. Because the issue has always been, for any big military in the world, to include the U.S. military, if there's any collateral damage or any way that the U.S. military accidentally takes out a civilian target or the wrong target, just like that, we're sucked back into the Middle East. Now, we've never left the Middle East, but I think the U.S. military has done a really good job at keeping low under the radar. I think a lot of people forgot. We're still in Iraq. The Iraq war ended in what, 2008, 2009? Nah, we're still there. We're very active in Syria. And to be fair, ever since the beginning of the war in Israel, we've been getting a brunt of the attacks from outside of Israel. Now, one thing I want to point out, and one thing that's really sort of bothered me about the United States, Lloyd Austin, and anyone like Kirby, anybody who's a figure in the United States military, no one is blaming the war in Israel for the attacks happening on U.S. military members. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a data scientist, but I don't think it takes an expert to realize war in Israel started, uptick in attacks with U.S. military, correlation. Look, I've taken statistics. I think I know a thing or two. It doesn't take an expert again. Anyway, I'm just blabbering from here. But understand this, the U.S. military will not acknowledge that the war in Israel has anything to do with the attacks with the United States. But I do have a little faith and hope in the United States because they did this tactic in Africa recently, and the tactic actually worked. In Africa, before France got kicked out of Niger, Africa, there were questions on whether or not the U.S. military was going to get kicked out of Niger, Africa. But here's what happened. When the junta in Niger, Africa came to power, the person who kept their mouth shut, the U.S. military, Joe Biden. Everyone kept their mouth shut. And France kept saying, the junta is the issue. The junta, the junta. The U.S. military, I don't know what's going on. It's not us. We're just here to figure it out. France got kicked out and the United States stuck around. So I think the United States is taking that playbook, utilizing it in the Middle East, keeping their mouth shut and not blaming Israel. They're not blaming Israel. All the United States is saying is we have the right to defend ourselves and we are going to strike back. The Islamic resistance in Iraq, we will fight them back. Now, it's taken about 80 plus attacks for the United States to finally do something about it, utilizing superior air power. And look, this might change things. It's either going to escalate the force or it's going to make things a little more peaceful for the U.S. military. But, this is what's happening right now in the Middle East. Okay, I had to move locations. I went to a Popeyes parking lot, keeping with the Americana theme. If you don't know what Popeyes is, in my opinion, it's a more superior version than KFC. I just think it's better. I love that Cajun twist with the chicken. Nonetheless, what is the end goal for the U.S. military? That is the question. When Joe Biden put the order out there to prepare for a worst case scenario, the implication for the DoD has always been, hey, a regional conflict might happen, so let's go ahead and actually start attacking the people who's attacking us. But that's not what's happening. Joe Biden, again, did not want to be the aggressor. I'm not putting all the blame on Joe Biden. He's the one who said this. The DoD literally went to Joe Biden and requested, hey, can we start to be a little more aggressive? Can we stop being on the defensive and start attacking the Islamic resistance in Iraq? Joe Biden said absolutely not. So it looks like we've changed a little bit. We've changed our force posture. We're not so much on the defense. And one thing we really need to put into context is things might change for the United States with this new ceasefire in Israel. This could allow for more forces to be a little more active, to try getting into Jordan through the West Bank, to try getting to Syria, because right now Israel has their hands tied behind their back. They can't do anything. They're not supposed to do anything. And so because of this, the U.S. military might be facing even more attacks so that the proxy units will let the U.S. and Israel know they mean business. They could care less about this ceasefire. And the United States, again, has been receiving the brunt of these attacks. Now, the United States sort of put themselves in this position, if we're going to be honest with ourselves and we're not going to be biased. When the war with Israel began, the very first person to step up and to say, Israel, you have the right to defend yourself. Israel, we got your back. We're going to send you 2 aircraft carriers. We're going to send you all of these ships. The United States. So it makes total sense that the United States, they are going to be the ones who receive the attacks. The United States, they're the ones who signed up for this. The U.S. military, they're also the ones who got a drone taken out over in Yemen by the Houthis. So this is what's happening. Now, do I think a regional conflict is going to start between all of these proxy units? Absolutely not. One thing I do have to point out is that Iran, they are the ones funding the proxy units, but Iran already had stated they want nothing to do with the war in Israel. Take it for how you will, but one thing Iran has always had an issue with and will always have an issue with, Western ideologies. And who represents the West? The U.S. military, the United States, and Israel. So no matter what, we're probably always going to see proxy units attacking the U.S. military in the Middle East. But now again, it looks like things have shifted. It looks like the U.S. military wants to start taking out these proxy units. When you whip out an AC-130 Ghost Rider, it's no joke. When that thing's flying in the sky, they're not there to practice. You can do that over in the United States. When you're flying out in the sky, you're utilizing one of your most secret assets and one of your most high-tech assets. And they're doing work out there. The AC-130J has taken out targets. F-15s, F-16s, they've taken out their targets. Again, I don't think this is a regional war, but I think the United States wants Iran to know we mean business. We are in the Middle East. If you keep attacking us, we are now going to attack you. It'll be very interesting to see how much more of these attacks might increase or decrease due to the ceasefire in Israel. I personally think the attacks will increase, but that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think down below. I think either way, I'd love to see some peace now that Thanksgiving is coming. But yeah, that's what's happening right now in the Middle East. And I hope you enjoy this new style of like vlogging and talking about geopolitical events. I want to try making this a new style and see if it works out. So we'll see you guys later.